Hi everyone, we're going to have a look at the bishop and knight checkmate today. It's probably the trickiest of all the checkmates, and it's one that not very many people can do, so we're going to have a look at this. Now there's an argument that this ending comes up very rarely and that it's not worth learning how to do it, but I have to disagree. I think any chess player worth their salt should be able to checkmate if they've got a two-piece advantage against a lone king. Obviously excluding the two-knight checkmate, which is impossible to force. The other thing about this checkmate is being able to perform it is going to improve how you coordinate bishop and knight during a middle game or an end game with other pieces on the board as well. It's also good for testing your calculation and chess vision. So as you can see on this board at the moment we've got no knights, and I've just set this up to illustrate a point as to why the knight and bishop checkmate is more difficult than with the other pieces. If you have a rook, or we could have a queen as well, the rook can keep the king back by forming a barrier. Here the rook on his 7th rank keeps the black king pinned back to the back rank. Obviously the queen can do the same job, and if we have a look at the two bishops, by covering adjacent diagonals they can also form a barrier which a king cannot cross. So the queen, rook and two bishops can keep the black king hemmed in on their own. Whereas if we look at the bishop and the knight, even when they're coordinating quite well, like in this position, they can leave gaps such as we see here in g4 and f3, through which the black king can invade. So the bishop and the knight are always going to need the help of a king, and we can see in this position if the white king was on g2, then f3 and h3 would be covered. And also we can see here that the bishop and knight coordinate best when they're on the same colour. The bishop on a white square covers white squares, and the knight on a white square covers black squares. And you can see if we put the knight onto d2, then we've got b3, c4 and e4, all of which are being covered twice, but we've got all these black squares that are not being covered at all. So that's just something to keep in mind generally when coordinating a bishop and knight. Okay, so this is the position that we're going to start from, and we're going to bear in mind the following ideas. We can only checkmate the black king in a corner the same colour as our bishop. So we need to get it in, the black king into this corner near a8 or the h1 corner. Black's best defence is to stay in the centre, well obviously can't be checkmated, or if he gets forced out of the centre, to head to a corner that is the opposite colour to our bishop. If he gets into the corner, then we're going to need our knight to drive him out. If the king was on h8, we can't drive him out with a bishop because it's the wrong colour, and obviously we can't check with a king, so we'd have to use a knight. So we'd have to make sure that if the king was on h8, we'd be able to get to f7 to deliver a check, or just to take away the h8 square. Also, when playing this endgame, there'll be positions where we want to effectively lose a move. We want to force black to move again. In these situations, we'll play a waiting move with the bishop. As it's a long range piece, it can move back along a diagonal while still controlling the same squares as it was before. And another thing to remember is that we will mainly be using our king to drive back the opposing king. So we'll be taking the opposition to force black back. Now the longest that this endgame should take is 33 moves. But remember, you've only got 50 moves to checkmate the black king, otherwise it's a draw by the 50 move rule. So we can't afford to have too many inaccuracies. Right, so there's lots of different ways of doing this, but we're going to start by taking away as many squares as we can and trying to force the king back. So first of all I'm going to put the bishop in a long diagonal, taking away a few squares, king f4, and then we'll take the opposition, king goes back, and now I'm going to go to king to e3, going towards the centre and shepherding the king towards one of the corners. And I play king e4, diagonal opposition, and the king's heading for h8, so we're following there. Now I'm going to have to bring a knight into play, move the king in again. Now ideally black would want to stay on these squares where he can't be checkmated. So I'm going to bring in the other pieces and take away these squares. So bishop e4 takes away h7. knight into the centre, king g8 only move. Now knight f7 takes away h8 and forces king f8. Now I want to stop him from going back to g8, so bishop to h7. King e8 is forced. Now you can see that he could go to d7 on the next move, so we take away that square. And he goes king d8. And we follow him to that corner, king d6. And he's played king to c7. Now it looks like he can escape via b6 and c5. And this is one of the patterns or positions that you need to remember. Because what we do here is we play the knight to d7, which takes away these squares. So knight to d7. So king d8. And then we take the opposition again, king d6. Goes to e8. Bishop check here. And his king's forced back to d8. Now we've got the bishop covering e8 square. And we've got the king covering e7 square. So we don't want to move those yet. So it's a knight move. And we play knight to c5. And that forces king to c8. And we can see that the knight and the king are taking away this row of squares, so we just need to keep forcing him towards a corner. So bishop check on f5. He tries to put up resistance, king to d8. Now this is another pattern to recognize. Knight to e6 forces a king to c8, because if his king went to e8, bishop to g6 would be checkmate, with a knight taking away d and f8. So now we've got the knight taking away the d8 square, and the black king is getting ever closer to the corner. So we take the opposition again, king to c6, king to b8 is forced. Now we can see that if we move a knight, then the bishop will take away the c8 square and force the king along again. So we've got a few options as to where to put that knight. d4, c5 and c7 are the ones closest to the black king. And we want to put the knight onto c5, the reason being from c5 it controls a6 and can jump into a6 if required. And this is better than knight to c7 because it keeps the c7 square free for the white king. So knight c5 and king to a7. Then we take the opposition again, forcing him into the corner. And this is now a mating free. So from here we just go to b6, king's forced to b8, check with a knight, driven back into the corner, b8 squares taken away, and the bishop checks, and that's checkmate. So this is a really good exercise to practice. I've put the position in the video description below, and it's really worthwhile practicing this against your computer or just on a board and defending the game yourself as well, and making sure that you can deliver the checkmate in less than 50 moves every time. Practice with the bishop and knight in different places as well. Make sure that once you have mastered the technique that you keep practicing this regularly, and you're sure to see a real improvement in your piece coordination. There we go. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you've got any questions or comments, please leave them below.